Welcome everybody, and welcome everybody in the room and online today. I'm excited to be here today with my panelists and talking about the topic of GenAI in the classroom and conversations basically across the curriculum. So here I have Dr. Jan Bewley from the Faculty of Education, Dr. David Churchill from the Faculty of Science, Department of Computer Science, and Dr. Maria Marr from Humanities and Social Sciences, Modern Languages, Literatures and Cultures.
It's the mouthful, but yes.
Yes. So we have a good diverse panel today, so we're looking to have some very rich discussion. I'm hoping that this will be a conversation. I teach myself in the Faculty of Business Administration as well, so I think we're all experiencing generative AI and interacting with it on some level, whether or not we're actually practicing with it or not. And we're beyond the point of emerging AI. It's a reality for us all today. So we cannot keep up with it in terms of policies and different things, and everybody's interacting with it in their own disciplines within their own context. So I think that's the scope of today, is that we want to hear what's happening across curriculums and even within your own individual contexts. Personally, as we move through some questions, we have about 4 questions in total. We'll hear from each of our panelists on those questions. But I'm also looking for the underlying philosophies and values and ethical approaches that you're each bringing to your own context and your own lived experiences with your students in the classroom. So we'll get going with our first question now, and I'll start with Dr. Jan Bewley on it. If you can tell me, Jan, how are you? It's day 1 of a semester and you're walking into your first class of the semester. How do you speak to your students? Is this something that's kind of top of the mind as you're entering into your first day of a course? Do you speak with your students on it? If so, how do you speak with your students, introduce it? And again, just reflecting on your own philosophies, your own experiences, your own values.
Sure, thanks, Kim. I will preface by saying that I am a collaborative, community-centered educator. So I teach in a circle, with circle pedagogy a lot of the time. Students are often seated in a circle in the classrooms where I facilitate and guide on the side, I say. I'm very much a learner-teacher in that order, and I consider all of the students in my presence to be co-educators with me. We're all there learning from each other. So the first day, Kim, is spent fostering and nurturing the seeds of that community to emerge, where we focus on trust and brave steps and taking risks and the importance of the space. I believe the space will always win. So in my teaching philosophy, if the students are only facing front, they never get to co-learn from each other. And in a way, I view AI in that way. I see it as a co-facilitator in some ways to help uncover some things that we hadn't thought of. I do talk a lot about ownership on that first day. Of course, as educators, we are obligated to seal our instruction with a course outline, and that is a contract between me and the learners. And in my course outlines, I'm teaching 4 courses this term. Each of those has a paragraph about my expectation in using AI or ChatGPT or any of the technological writing tools that they might have. My expectation has never wavered that it be generated by you, and that there's nothing wrong with going online and using AI as a tool to find out a little bit more about Roald Dahl, who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, those wonderful novels that we look at what do you know about E.B. White, who wrote Charlotte's Web? Or what do you know about Jackie Woodson, who's a wonderful African-American picture book writer? However, my PhD advisor, way back at NYU, used to tell us all that we need to be better crap detectors. And I'm going to say that with every bit of irreverence. We need to be better at sifting through the garbage online. And I was intrigued with a commentary on The Current yesterday on CBC that Singapore and Korea are leading the way in teaching critical thinking with grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3. So they encourage kids to look up something about a spider, and AI might say, well, a spider has 6 legs like the other insects, which is wrong. So those critical thinking skills are taught at very young ages, and I think it would behoove us all to get on board that train. There isn't enough critical thinking happening. So how am I doing for time?
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
Good.
Yeah.
You mentioned some interesting ideas though, ownership and tool, like being a tool for learning. That's excellent. Dave, how about yourself?
So we have almost polar opposite classrooms. I'm teaching senior level computer science courses. It couldn't get more dry in terms of subject matter. Like, here's exactly what you need to type in terms, like, for the computer to do what you want it to do. But in my first lecture, I had like a 20-minute spiel on all of this. And I'm just trying to be as honest as possible with them, which is, here's the problem, is that it is impossible to give an assignment that's take home that an undergraduate student can solve that AI can't solve, right? So there's this wonder drug out there, like the academic heroin, which you press a button and you get this huge dopamine hit and it just solves it for you. And that is, as we see with any sort of issue like that, it's very powerful, right? It's a big draw. And so they're going to be like, oh, okay, solve my assignment, and it's done. And not doing that takes a force of will that's actually kind of incredible, right? We didn't have this available to us 3 or 4 years ago, and now students are probably going through, you know, the last 4 or 5 years of their life doing this at various levels of education. So I tell them that as a professor, my job has gone more from teacher to detective, trying to, you know, figure out, oh, this looks suspicious, and questioning students and stuff. And I don't want that to be the way things are. So I said I could either be a detective or I could try and convince you not to use those tools in ways that are not conducive to learning. So my number one rule that I gave them as like practical advice to give students is that if it's possible for you to spend time and derive a solution, do that. But in computer science, at least, there's a lot of things where you just need to be told something. Like, what is the Windows API function that does this specific thing to a file? No matter how long you think, you can't just know that. And so there are things that you just need to be told or things you need to look up. So if you use these tools to help you solve that type of problem that's not derivable given some amount of thinking, then it's just basically Google, and you're going to use that all the time anyway. So use it to learn, but don't just copy and paste in the text of the assignment and then copy and paste in the answer of the assignment. And
there's where we connect.
Hopefully they understand that thing. And the second short thing is, like, if you do use this to solve the assignment, it's like taking a forklift to the gym, right? Sure, you lifted 600 pounds, but you didn't do it. And then when you go to your job interview, that's why you're here, to get that job, right? And then they're like, lift this 600 pounds, and you're like, can I use my forklift? And they say no. Well, you're kind of out of luck, right? There's not going to be that tool isn't going to be there in the interview.
So just on that though, what is kind of different here? You mentioned that, you know, it's like the cocaine, it's like the heroin of education now for students. But why is it so different than Google or even copying things from a chapter, as you know, from past, before AI? The tools that were available then for information to students? Is it the instantaneous? Is it the accessibility, the ease of it? What makes it different?
In my opinion, the big thing is that this is a system that's not only capable of database queries, but it's capable of logic and problem solving, right? So before, at least you had to have the skill to cheat, to find the answer somewhere. But now it's literally, it's like there's just an expert sitting next to you who can do all the things you want it to do.
It's doing it for you.
And so the answer to that would be that it's much easier and it takes all levels of critical thinking out.
Yes.
Mhm.
And can I layer in there, Kim? I think the danger is the student with limited time management skills who the last minute resorts to it as a cheating or a cop-out, haven't planned time for critical thinking, haven't planned time for sifting, going through the material that can really make a rich assignment, and then that's the cop-out. Then they're caught. So it's an easy, I wouldn't say it's an expert on the side. I would say it's like, my analogy is it's the scallop dragger at the bottom of the ocean, which we all know ChatGPT is forever sifting through with claws, pulling up information that is proprietary, and I would say ethically, we'll get to that, it's illegal what is happening a lot of the time, pulling through Margaret Atwood's material, and we all know the response she had. But it's sifting in devious ways that then present themselves as quality. And therein lies the real predicament.
Interesting.
In knowing quality. Yeah.
Maria?
Yeah. So you stole my metaphor. I also go to the gym and say, you know, the weights, did you cheat on my cheat? No, but I think how I did it this year in an introduction to the course is just talk about that. I'm not so much worried about them cheating, right? Like that's not the worry. The worry about is them not learning, right? Like that's what I'm worried about. Like how does learning happen with AI, despite AI? I'm more leaning towards the despite AI, to be honest. Because I think learning
What does that mean, despite AI?
Despite AI, that I think even though it is there, the heroine is there, right? How do we encourage our students to engage in the process and not go to the heroine, right? Not go and make the AI do for it. So I think, I think that's a second question, but I think it's like, you know, really having this conversation with students, what is learning, right? And like, how is that different from information, right? How is that, what is knowledge? And that all of that is a process, right? That we can only do it when we lift the weights ourselves, right? And it doesn't matter, you can buy the most expensive weights. If you're not studying them yourself, you're not gonna have that physical and mental health that you're hoping for. And I think that's similar with learning. So if we can really have that, no matter what, if it's a language course, a culture course, a math course, I don't think it matters. Like have that conversation with students about what learning is, talk about it cognitively, talk about it relationally, right? Like, so I think you mentioned that learning is also relational. It happens between people. Studies show that that is what drives attention, that is what drives engagement, right? So learning happens more if it is in a shared space. So I think if we can put out those basic benefits of what learning actually is to students, then maybe we get more buy-in, right? To not go to the heroine.
Interesting. So you put it more in the context of learning and positioning where AI is within that process or in relation to that
and what
process.
it can do and what it cannot do.
Excellent, excellent. Good. I'm gonna ask you next, Dave, if you don't mind, what ethical considerations, so building upon that, what ethical considerations do you emphasize when discussing this with students or even one-on-one with a student? What enters into the conversations from an ethics point of view?
Well, from being on different committees, talking about AI in academia and stuff, I think the most important thing up front is to be very clear with students on what you would consider to be ethical or not ethical within the context of that course.
Right.
So one of the things that, you know, all these universities are trying to come up with policy documents and everything on what are we going to do But I really do think it just ultimately comes down to, it's up to the person teaching that course, because you've hired this professor to teach a course and then come up with the learning outcomes, right? And you trust that person based on their experience and their knowledge to say, okay, we can use AI here, we can't use AI here. So
Right.
to be very upfront with students on what the expectations are and what is or is not academic offenses. So if we're talking, I know there are many other topics when it comes to ethics and AI,
Right.
but that's just, I think practically one of the more important ones to come up with. I keep telling students that, so in computer science, for many years, just having this piece of paper, the degree, was like Willy Wonka's golden ticket, right?
There you go.
And that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So within the context of these students who entered their school right now at the height of the job market 3 years ago, it's like, well, all I need is that piece of paper, and I'm just going to get it by any means necessary. I mean, that's why people take shortcuts. And I tell them, listen, the ethical thing here is that I don't want, they think the point is for them to hand in working code.
Yes. Yeah.
When it's not at all. I have lots of working assignments. I don't need more of them. What I always need more of are students capable of solving those problems on their own. And so that's the thing they need to understand is, and 3 or 4 years ago, if they did get the degree by academic misconduct or whatever, it almost didn't matter because they were going to get that job anyway, and that's the point. That's why they're in university. Most students aren't here to learn. They're here to get a job, right? Because as a society, we've said, this is what you need to do to get a job. And so I understand that draw to cheat. But in the end, now, as this job market starts to go down a little bit, they need to consider that they're not going to be as prepared. It's not as free as it used to be.
So you approach it mostly from a practical perspective.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I only have a few minutes to talk. So that was my topic, and I'll let others talk about the other.
We'll move on, but we can certainly come back and you can add in as others speak. Jen?
The ethical pieces for me come back to pride of ownership of what it is that you're bringing to a task. And I guess because I teach drama, I teach literacy for K to 6, I teach graduate courses in literacy, and I'm teaching creative arts this term, visual arts and theater. And, last night in the theater class, we made gypsona masks. We learned about masks, and I had together some photos of masks from around the world. We looked at those on a table in front of us. We talked together about our assumptions and our beliefs and what we know about mask making. And then we did the mask making together. And it was such an incredibly powerful, visceral experience to have that happening right there, live in the class. There was no AI involved at all in any of it. It was a process-driven task. Some of the students finished their masks last night and others did not. We pushed the pause button off and we talked about the fact that could never have been generated by anybody except our own hands. And yes, I invited them to leave at the end of class and go and journal a little bit about what was this process like for you to have gypsona on your face, and think about the people in Indigenous communities and around the world who use tools to create beautiful masks on the West Coast, and all of what we shared in that communal, people to people setting, that I just think ethically we have to get smarter as educators in these settings in inviting students to show us authentic learning like that. The essay is dead as far as I'm concerned. Unless we find ways to teach that critical thinking, I don't want to spend my life as a detective. Nothing irritates me more than to think somebody plagiarized and then I have to spend 4 hours sifting through to see if I can find the source. That's not where I want to spend my days as an educator. I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I have a conversation with the student, but that's not my role.
The in-class
So-
essay is coming back from the dead, though.
Sure, so
Interesting.
sometimes the journaling happens with me and we all write. I write there in the class, and then there's nothing more authentic than that, I think. And
I find it interesting because you've both touched on this similar thing, you know, the critical thinking, the problem solving, and I just wonder if it's easier to do in one discipline than the other. You're very, you know, it's very structural, very concrete, and you have more ability to in your course, say, to
be playful.
to be more flexible in the structure of your class. Would you think there's a difference there?
Like I teach both language, which is more like computer science, right, and literature classes, and I don't see the difference that much because, and I think that's more the next question, but I think it depends on what you value and what you give marks for in your class, right? So if you have a process-based evaluation system, a task-based evaluation system, then you reward students for doing something over and over again until they get it right, learning from the mistakes. So it's not, the onus isn't on getting it right, it's all about learning it, right? So I think if you switch your syllabi at least 50% task-based at this institution right now, we still have to give a mark, so we can't do it entirely task-based. But if I do 50% task-based, which means that, you know, I really say, do it 3 times and I give you the highest mark. And if you get 100, that's awesome, you get 1 out of 1, right? Because that's the point. So that's for those routines, so there's no pressure. Take the pressure away, take the temptation of the heroin away, right? To go and get the answer, which is out there. Who can do it better than someone in first year of German, quite frankly, right? So I think that is one thing about that, where I think it works in every discipline in different ways. Really. But I would like to touch on that a little bit for the ethical question. To return us to that. I think, so I looked at this for iPads. I tried to convince my students they should write by hand. So I looked at all the studies that were done. Should you write by hand or not? And actually the conclusion was it doesn't actually quite matter. So the results were similar. But the problem, of course, is that for the children using iPads or the learners using, they had to invest in that. There was money needed, there was infrastructure needed, the access to technology depending on where you came from, how affluent you are, and so on. So that by the end of the day, writing by hand was still the most democratic access to education. And that's how I see it with AI as well, because there is OpenAI, but apparently even OpenAI cannot exist on its own, right? At the end, you need those huge data training machines that only the really big companies have access to. So if we integrate AI in education, I think we're rendering it undemocratic ultimately, because then institutions will have to subscribe to it, learners will have to subscribe to it, and so on. So if we can do just as good without it, right? I think that's the argument. If we can, the learning you described is amazing. I actually think we can do better without it. But let's say, we don't have those studies yet, let's say if we can do just as good, then why not just do it cheaper? Right? So that's my ethical thing of
But can we go back? Like, can we not use it at this point?
I think we don't have to. I think we have to ensure that learning happens when it's there. We have to assume that students are using it. That's okay. But the way in which you make your assignments and the way in what you value, how you value their learning, if that's not for marks, that's not what you give the mark for. Right? So it kind of doesn't really matter.
Right.
And I also don't think we have to teach students how to use it. I think we have to teach them how to use it critically. So sure, give me that outline that I ask you for in a scaffolded assignment. Give me that outline AI generated and make it better. So you learn how to critically assess both the potential of it and the downfall of it. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what is good, you can't evaluate if it's good. So somewhere along the line, you still have to learn it.
That's the kicker. That's the kicker. What a good point you raised. If they don't know what quality looks like, then we're failing. We're failing students by not teaching. It's crap detection again. I come back to that. It's knowing when a thing is complete garbage. But in order to sift, we have to provide time to do that.
Yeah.
And we are so fast-paced in our classes. We have 12 weeks, we have 13 weeks of contact time, and it just flies. And we have to carve out more time to be more civilized and
It's interesting because you were talking about that earlier, Dave, about the we're in time slots here. We've chunked out education into segments of time, right? So that puts a parameter around the learning that has an impact, right? Yeah.
Well, one more thing about the ethics is, so I teach one of the undergrad courses in sort of an intro to AI and computer science.
Okay.
And what I did in the last offering in the winter was invite someone from the philosophy department who specializes in AI ethics to come give a lecture.
cool.
So that was like 6 or 7 different topics, gave sort of an intro to each one, everything from, digital content
Cool.
theft, because these LLMs are the largest theft in history,
Yeah, there you go.
period, right? And it turns out if you give lots of money to the people in charge, you don't get in trouble for it. But if any of us had done that, we'd be in jail. And other things like, things about the ethical considerations when forming training sets, so you don't get biases against races or
Yes.
genders or whatever,
Right.
like all these different things. So don't have time to go into all that now, but there are ethical considerations for AI that students should be aware of outside of the context of academic integrity.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
My students brought up yesterday about the environment and all sorts of different ethical questions. Interesting. I'll just move on to the next question related. You can kind of continue that train of thought. Based upon the ethics that you would talk to your students about or try to integrate into the conversation, do you build course policies around it, or do you have any parameters that you actually put into your courses that guide students in your assignments and that sort of thing?
Want me to jump in?
I'll start with
Yeah.
Maria
Yeah.
here
Okay.
and we'll work backwards this time. Yeah.
So I did actually experiment a little bit, right? I want the students to try it out. So we used an AI chat, like a conversational chatbot for language learning in the second year class. So I give the prompt, I say, use this level of language with this grammar and it's not talking, exercise with the AI for about 15 minutes. I think the weightlifting exercising is more appropriate than conversation. So exercise with the AI for 15 minutes, letting it autocorrect you. So the AI can say, oh, this was wrong because, and so on. So, and then print that out, tell me the 10 new vocab you learned from this or 5 new grammar things you learned from this, and then reflect on how you think this would have gone differently had it been a person. Right? And that was insightful for me as well. Like I learned a lot from that. So students with certain, untypical learning needs, right? They reported back that it's of great benefit. And I do appreciate that. I think because they said, that's the kind of time that a person just doesn't have for me in an educational setting where everyone is time to 50 minutes, right? So they get, that person derived great benefit from those kinds of exercises and they use them a lot in the class. So I do think there's something about accessibility to be said about AI, but at the end of the day, all of them agreed that it was repetitive, it was a little bit mundane, and that it was not a conversation, right? And I think to let students reflect on that it's actually not a conversation, that in itself was a worthwhile exercise. So I do think we should, bring it up. We can't pretend it's not there, but I think we can show its limitations, highlight how it's not what is different, and I think that revalues or puts more value on the actual face-to-face. But if I may, but I think more important than integrating it, I really think is what we talked about before, like going back to or embracing methods of instruction that have been around for a long time, right? And grading or task-based or, seminar style even, right? Where most of the mark is based on doing together and not in I come prepared with an answer, I'm going to read it off and that's done, but come as a discussion and participate in a discussion based on the preparation that I asked you to do for homework, right? So the lecture is online, and then the classroom is for doing together, right? And discussion doesn't work very well for the language class necessarily either, of course. They read just practice. So I can see the limitations for that in other disciplines. But when it comes to essay writing or all of that, and then another thing is even for my online courses that I developed with you was oral exams, midterm oral exam, final oral exam. I think that is an easy way to do it. I think you can also do it for a research paper. Trust the students, they do it on their own, and then bring them in, have a 15-minute conversation about what they wrote. It's exciting, they get to talk about it, I get to talk about it, but it also ensures that the student understood what they learned. Does it then matter if they learned it with the help of AI or not? Maybe not, they learned it.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent. Jan, policies in your course?
I have an expectation that you will present your own work, but there's no profession that does more borrowing, adapting, taking, stealing than teaching, I would say, where you walk down a hallway of a school and you say, cool idea. And you go talk to the teacher and see if you can adapt that. There's a lot of stuff online for lesson planning, let's be honest. I think at the end of the day, and I do this often, I think, what would I want Jessica, what would I want Michael to leave walking out of in a classroom at the end of an hour and a half with me? And if it isn't a joyous love of with-itness, I call it with-itness as a teacher, where you're so in tune with the kids in your care in front of you, that you want to stay up and create that unit that is so individually going to connect with the kids that you know best. How boring to go out and download something that was made in Newark, New Jersey by a teacher who's also doing a unit on fairy tales and try to make it fit what you're doing. And so I think, I know this, not I think, in the assignments that students are handing in, and they're doing novel units and things that are going to help them, I hope, in their own classroom teaching, I say, tell me where you deviated a little bit and went into AI to find out a little bit more about the history of Cinderella. Or be sure to cite that you've borrowed that from that teacher's site, or that you were out on your practicum and this was an idea from Mrs. Carnegie in grade 3 at what school in Torbay. That you do that robust work so that we're being honest. And then I'm hoping that joy is filling them to say, so it's so boring, it's just so flat to just find something online. Real estate, maybe not so, no house cares. You do it, you Google it, you look at that porch and you say, okay, I like that, I'm gonna steal that. But it's a people industry. And so I think about teaching as being connected to people. I think about the times I've done an exit interview with students in a grad class on family engagement in schools, and to have a student from an international country come and educate me about that through a conversation. And then you really learn what makes that learner tick. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it's more about the learning than the policy or strict
Absolutely.
or policies
Absolutely.
again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dave?
I think in computer science, at least, what I'm seeing from my colleagues is a shift back to more in-class assessment. So the way that we assess students is changing, sort of back to more old school methods. Like I teach this 4th year game programming course that I'm doing right now. And to me, it's ludicrous to give an in-class paper written exam on game programming. It's the worst way possible to learn that subject material. To just arbitrarily memorize some facts and then spew them back. But it's necessary because it's literally the only way that I can evaluate them and be sure that what they have said came from their brain, right? So last year, 2 years ago, this was like 50% assignments, 50% big project, but I literally have no way of knowing that they did that. And so I'm introducing back in-class exams, and this year it's only 20%. It might go up, it might go away, but I almost sound like like an abusive spouse in class, I'm like, I'm bringing back exams for you, not for me. You know, like, it's because this will actually make you learn the thing. Trust me, it doesn't feel good, but it will benefit you in the long run. And it's just this weird situation where I feel like I'm punishing them because this technology exists. And, but how, like, the whole point of an academic institution is to be a verifier of a skill set, right? That's what the degree means. And passing my course means that I know that you have these skills. And how can I know that you have those skills? By somehow putting you into this box in which I am sure that you're the person who's done this thing. And that's the thing that sucks the most about all this AI stuff, is the loss of trust. Like, trust now has to almost be earned rather than assumed with students, because you walk into the class, you just have to assume they're all heroin addicts, you know, like, and all using AI and stuff, and then prove to me that you're not.
Did they create a game with you? So is it possible to do that in class with you seeing them doing that?
No, because it's not a game design course, it's a game programming course. So this course is intended to be, if you've gone to a game company and your boss has handed you a list of things to do, that's a subset of physically implementing the game. Now you're just at a computer programming. So it's incredibly difficult to do that with a class of 70 students in any sort of interactive circle-based thing. I basically have to get up I do lecture, it's a little interactive, you know, they can stop me and ask questions whenever they want. But this sort of like mathematical type lecturing, it's very difficult to do it in any other way than here's a set of knowledge, do an assignment on it. Here's another set of knowledge, do an assignment on it. And our facilities, I'm not saying anything bad about the university, but the facilities of the classroom don't facilitate that type of work. It's like they have to learn it, then go home and do it. So, because they have the computer at home to actually do the programming.
Dave, I think you really hit on a few things there too around trust, and it's changed your relationship with the student and how you kind of set yourself up and them for success now. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of where you see your role going? I'll start with you because you kind of went there. Like, is this changing your role as an educator? And where do you see that going into the future? And then we'll kind of chime in with.
Yeah, I think we've all, you know, made the joke that we're all shifting from doctor to detective, right? And that just eats up a lot of time that I'm not spending on other things like research or committees, or, you know, I have to tell my TA something like, okay, here are some signs that these assignments have been done by AI, right? And so luckily for me, AI does things in a very high level way that I haven't taught the students yet. And so the students are in an unfortunate position to be able to cheat, but to not understand enough about the topic to know how obvious their submitted work looks to me, right? It's like, okay, if you're reading, you know, an essay written in like a Newfie accent, and then there's a paragraph of Shakespeare, it's just like, it's obvious, right? And that's the exact same way with code. And so what I have to do, not to get too much into this, is just say, okay, the TA has pointed out a few assignments because I don't have time to like individually mark everything. And then I'll get those people into my office and just say, hey, what does this line of code do? What does this line of code do? You've handed it in. So it doesn't even matter if they used AI or they paid someone else to do their assignment. If they've handed in something that they don't know what it is, that's the only proof that I need, right? So I don't like having to do that, but the tools are just so easy now that I almost have to spend part of the first lecture convincing them that I'm on their side, right? And, you know, you all hear these horror stories of profs walking in, oh, only half of you are going to pass this course. That's not what I want at all. I want everyone to pass this course, right? All the time. I want everyone to get 100%, right? And so this is the way I think that you can get these grades in a most efficient way, and hopefully they trust me when it comes to that, rather than looking at me like a police officer who's just
Right.
out to catch them,
Exactly.
right? And it's hard to do that.
But yeah, and I get that from the three of you actually, that kind of borders into what you were talking about earlier, Maria, about how you kind of set the class up and set the context for the learning versus the focus on the technology and AI, right?
But I think what you touched on as well, David, is that yes, it's a matter of having a classroom of 70 students, right? And I think so with AI, I think sometimes the assumption is that with AI we're going to teach larger and larger classes or so on. But I think on the contrary, with AI we're going to teach smaller and smaller classes, because what we're going to have to focus on more and more is not maybe how we convey the knowledge. So you can flip your classroom, right? And you can listen to the lecture at home. And then it's about what we do in the classroom is facilitate engagement with that material, because that's where learning happens, is in actually using the data, actually using the information.
So do you see your role changing though from
I think so. I think
because of AI in that kind of manner?
I think that it's becoming, and the internet before, and like good YouTube educational videos before that, and now AI, where I really think what are we here for as teachers is open a space, a framework. Sometimes I call it a file plan, a schedule, where I say, okay, I know you're all busy, you're taking 5 courses, you have a job, life, you have children, whatever it is, right? But I'm going to incentivize you week by week to keep going on our little train to success, right? And that means that we achieve those milestones step by step, because it's sequential learning in language teaching in particular, right? And then have authentic experience, right? Have engaging ways in which that material then is used, right? The memorizing has to happen at home. I can't do that for anyone. That's the weightlifting, right?
Yeah.
So I think it is changing, but I think it's also changing about, I think further changes that I haven't thought through yet is, right, like how are we, it's no longer just information is out there, right? So maybe that doesn't necessarily have to be memorized the same way as it had to 100 years ago, right? But are we really just teaching information? No, I think we're teaching ways of thinking, habits of thought, certain, critical thinking skills and so on. And we're also teaching, I think, for innovation and for creativity and for new ideas. And I don't see AI recycles, it gives us statistically probable results, right? I don't think Galileo relied on, what was out there already when he said the things he said, right? Like, so how do we still do innovation? So if we focus in the classroom more about, does that necessitate knowing content, knowing code, knowing vocab, knowing certain methods? Sure.
And Jen, for you, do you feel your role is changed or changing or will be different in the future because of this? You've reflected on how you've always taught and how you approach your course. I mean, it doesn't seem to be as.
I don't know, Kim. I think a lot about learning and the role of a university, the role of any place of teaching, forest as a school, right? The river as a teacher. And I think about the fact that we're learning all the time, but I may not be teaching what I think students are learning. And students may not be learning what I think I'm teaching. I'm reflecting on a math teacher I had in high school, and I went every day, but I learned to fear math. So that was the learning from that, and I grew to hate it. And you when you step back and look at what AI is seemingly doing that is simple, I come back to joy. That if it isn't seated in joyous discovery with creativity at its core, then I am not doing my job. I go back to, what do I want Jessica to think about? When she leaves today, I want her to see that she's a poet. We did a poetry writing thing today. We did it in class, and it was a struggle. I asked for a show of hands, when did you last write joyously? And somebody said, does that include a shopping list on my cell phone? I said, I don't know, was it joyous? Were you going somewhere that you needed to, find those ingredients? Not one hand went up. And to me, that's a loss of so much. So I'm trying to rekindle that with authentic stuff.
Excellent.
And it's terrifying for students. I think we should be dangerously imaginative in what we're doing. I don't want to walk in and do the same thing I've always done. But at my core, I'm very, very situated with a philosophy that I have seen work with collaborative climate at the front, with compassion guiding me, with care, and all those. I've got a list of C words up in every classroom. Every classroom I teach in. So that's what guides me always. Is what I'm asking them to do going to teach caring with a group of 5-year-olds?
Excellent.
Maria's got a little cricket in grade 3, and I think the hours I would spend thinking about how do I reach those 25 kids, and at the end of the day, who did I miss?
Mm-hmm.
And AI isn't going to do that at all for me.
Awesome. This has been fantastic.
Do you mind if I add something? I think
Absolutely.
this is so fascinating because
Yeah.
our worlds couldn't be more
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're at the same university. Like,
Yeah.
I have a class, a senior level computer science class of 85% international students
Yes.
who have come here,
Yeah.
and joy is all well and good,
Mhm.
but if you can't eat, it's very hard to find joy.
Mhm.
And so these students are here to get a job that will lift their family out of abject poverty in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's also my job to ensure that that knowledge gets delivered and to beat it into them in some cases. Like, my wife has said numerous times to me that every single piano lesson she went to as a child was torture, and she hated going. But now she appreciates it because she has this skill. So she may not have put her hand up and said, this is joyful music, right? But down the road, when you have those skills and you've put in the work and you have the knowledge and you got the job, you can feed your family, I think that's the joy as well, right? There's two different kinds. It's like, no, you may not enjoy having to do this work among 5 other courses that you're doing. This assignment that's 10,000 lines of code, well, not that much, but 1,000 lines of code that took you 10 hours. Guess what? You're not going to see the joy in that until later.
Right.
And so sometimes we just come from different worlds,
It's like
I think. And
Maslow's
so-
hierarchy of needs kind of thing.
Yeah, I do think that, as an educator, the last thing I want to be thinking about is the job. But in math, science, computer science, things like this, that's why people are here, because there is so much content out there that if all they wanted was the knowledge, they'd just go watch YouTube all day. But that doesn't give them the piece of paper that's the foot in the door to start their career and live their life, right? So there's so many different aspects to it.
That
I
practical
do want
piece
to
of
leave a
teaching.
little time
Yeah.
here for some Q&A from our online people or our attendants. in
There
the
is joy
audience.
in my class.
This
I believe there's humor.
This has been amazing discussion,
Fun.
actually. Like,
Lovely.
it's interesting to hear the breadth of approaches, but
Sure.
fundamentally, what's at the core here too is the learning, and for whatever driver is driving that forward, it's certainly more than just the technology itself, right? So it's interesting. I'll open it up for some questions here, either online, Darlene, you're monitoring that, or if there's any from our in-person attendants.
I'll just ask if you can kind of elaborate on the challenges faced around the class sizes, like some of that one-on-one piece, like David, you had mentioned sitting down and say, explain your code. to verify learning. And you're not going to sit down and do that as a part of giving feedback on any assessment when you got 70 people. You're not sitting down and doing 70 interviews after every assessment. But I see the value in that, and it shows what you as the educator are bringing to the process, because like you say, you can learn anything online. So how do you balance that in such a way that you motivate the students to want to learn? Maria, like you had mentioned, it's about that process of learning and having them understand why the learning is important as much as the credential is. Because, you know, what they go out with and speak to in their interviews that gets them their jobs. You referenced that before. It's not as easy as it once was. But like, how do you manage that and build that confidence, I guess, in the creeping of class sizes that's happening within the institution now?
Who wants to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah,
David.
so there are parameters to education, right? One of them is class size. One of them might be the desired learning outcome. The other has to do with their knowledge before they come into the course, prerequisites and stuff like this. Another big one is money. How much money does your university have to give them all computers or something like this, right? And so class size is one thing that you have to manage. And I think that I have taught very small graduate courses, and that was much more hands-on, right? If I was teaching one person to do something, it would be like a tutoring session. We just sit down at the computer and do things. But that's physically not possible unless you have a ton of money to hire 50 TAs, or or you come up with some other scheme to like teach a bunch of people. And like first year first year psych classes, first year physics classes have 300 people in the room. How do you deal with that, right? So part of that is as scientists looking at what has worked in the past and trying to improve on that a little bit. But it's just a fact that certain teaching styles are dictated by the class size. And you have to do, like in the end, the show must go on. So you have, like I have to lecture to a class that size.
The space will win.
But at the same time, some classes have labs where then you get to interact more closely with students. And also I have office hours where my promise to them is that they won't leave without their problem solved, right? So I do sit down one-on-one with them, and there might be a line out the door, but I'll stay until everyone's looked at. So.
Excellent. Maria,
I-
do you have a?
I'm sorry.
Another question.
Okay.
I had a question online, so
Yep.
I just
Go
wanted
ahead.
to make sure. Any thought, this is from Philippe, any thought on the burdensome necessity for us as teachers to be trained ourselves in using GenAI to be able to advise our students being well informed?
Excellent question.
I
Maria?
do think we have to do it. So we started a reading group. We haven't had our first meeting yet, but we will this week on like AI and language teaching. The first books are coming out and so on. So I think it's good for us, once a month, 1 hour, chapter at a time. It's probably all the time we have, right? I think that's the issue a little bit. We're also busy, that it's a bit tricky. So I do think we have to look at it and see also so that we can maybe change our mind or say we can adopt this. Because I think one of the challenges of the class is too, maybe there are some tools where we free our time to do more one-on-one because all the other more tedious stuff is done by automated grading, right? I mean, that's kind of nice too if I don't have to correct conjugations or drills or like drill type learning things, then I have more time for one-on-one or oral exams in particular, right? So it's good, I think, keep up with the technology, see what it can do for you to make more time, even in a larger classroom, to be with the students.
Yeah.
But I do think we have to learn it.
Play around with it. Philippe is the person that I said. Yeah, that's a neat question, Philippe. And I go back to the current yesterday. Teachers in Singapore and Korea are being given PD opportunities to come and muck around with it, to play with it. And when it first came out, I thought, I have to see what this can do. We all may know about the incredible tragedy of the young person who was coached to end his life through Chat GPT. And so there are those dangers that I certainly want to know about with vulnerable youth and the age of students that I'm working with. But I think we must
Mhm.
play with it and find out the parameters of it, find out the limitations, find out the dangers, and then tell our students to do the same.
Yes.
We must do that. That's responsible.
We have a community of practice
We
here
do.
at Memorial as well on AI, so that's across the institution. If for those who are interested in learning with their peers more about it as well, so
Great
I
group.
encourage anybody who's out there and would like to learn more, that's a great opportunity for sure.
But I think that also says something that we can do this. Like I grew up without computers, without internet, without an email address
Yeah.
until I was at
Yeah.
university, right?
Yeah.
And this, I'm not that old. Like this was early 2000s, right? So, and yet we are able to do those things and
Sure.
learn it. So I think that's also kind of hopeful for our students to say, you know, maybe don't dread it so much. Because I don't think we necessarily have to teach it, because those are skills they will learn just how we learned to use things, right? And they will change. 5 years from now, it'll be a different interface, a different software system. So I think we will always be learning those new technologies. That's part of our life.
Yeah.
But what we have to teach them is how to learn
Mhm.
and how to evaluate what they learn. And everything else is maybe secondary.
Excellent. We've come to the end of our time. I'm just going to ask our panelists one final thing. In 30 seconds or less, what would be your final word that you want to leave with us today
Keep
on
shoveling,
AI?
keep shoveling and keep sifting. Keep questioning.
Excellent. Dave?
Not only educators and students need to learn how to use AI, but also some of the policymakers above us.
Awesome. Good.
Slow down. Let's not rush into it.
Right, good. And always slow and steady wins the race, right? Excellent. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you. Thank you for joining in the
Thanks, yeah.
conversation today.
Nice
I think-
facilitation without, we couldn't do it without a person here. Wouldn't be joyous.
Oh, you did
Wouldn't
really
be
need it.
joyous.
This
Oh,
is
yes,
a
we
great
did.
conversation, so thank you very much.